When Trump's fixer-in-chief steps up for a federal bench lifetime seat, the only thing more corrupt than his record is how Republicans pretend it's all fine. Let's break it down.
Now I'd like to say a little bit about me. I am someone who tries to stand up for what I believe is right. I'm not afraid to make difficult decisions. I understand that some of those decisions have generated controversy. I respect this process, and I'm here today to address some of your questions about those decisions. But I want to be clear about one thing up front. There is a wildly inaccurate caricature of me in the mainstream media. I am not anybody's henchman. I'm not an enforcer. I'm a lawyer from a small town who never expected to be in an arena like this. Not until Todd called me and gave me an opportunity to participate in some of the most historic and significant legal battles of our lifetime. I'm proud of what Todd and I accomplished as part of President Trump's defense team. But I think that because some of that happened so recently, it might be easy to overlook the fact that I've spent most of my life in public service. I have taken an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States more than once, and I have honored that oath. These experiences collectively, as a paralegal, a law clerk, a prosecutor, and a defense lawyer, have left me with deep respect for the rule of law. That is a system that is in place to protect everyone, and the federal courts play a critical role in that process. Those are the first principles that would guide me every single day if I'm fortunate enough to be confirmed. Thank you again for this opportunity to give some remarks at the start, and I look forward to your questions.
Let's be clear. Emil Bove is not some innocent country lawyer caught in the political crossfire. He's the architect of Trump's legal witch hunts, firing DOJ agents probing January 6th, dismissing charges against Trump allies like Eric Adams, and dodging basic Senate questions like, did you talk to Stephen Miller? His refusal to answer isn't about ethics. It's a smoke bomb. If you won't say who pulled the strings, we already know the puppet master. This is Trumpism in robes. Loyalty to power over law. And the GOP? They cheered it on. Now, let's watch Bove attempt damage control in his own words, where he plays the victim, romanticizes his past, and brushes off accountability with legal theater. Ready? Let's roll the tape.
There are serious reasons to question the legitimacy of these allegations against you. This initial unconfirmed whistleblower report was leaked to the media, and the Justice Department was only given 15 minutes to respond to the story. The Deputy Attorney General has unequivocally, publicly denied the allegations, and indeed the alleged whistleblower previously signed a brief affirming the Justice Department did not violate court orders in its use of the Alien Enemies Act. I want to hear from you directly. How do you respond to these allegations? And did you ever advise the Department of Justice to defy court order?
So to get to the last part of that question first, Chairman, no, I have never advised a Department of Justice attorney to violate a court order. And if I could elaborate a little bit. I'm respectful of the whistleblower process. And I understand that there's protections in place around that, and also that there are valid contributions made to good government through that process. I don't want to disparage that whistleblower in this proceeding, but I also have to address, to some extent, the allegations. As you noted at the outset, I'm also bound by privileges that the whistleblower did not consider himself bound with in leaking that report to this committee just yesterday. But there are a few things I'd like to say and confirm. I will reiterate, I did not advise any Justice Department attorney to violate court orders. The Deputy Attorney General, as you made clear in your opening remarks, Chairman, has confirmed that the account in that whistleblower complaint is not accurate. But even if that account is taken at face value, the whistleblower acknowledges that he left the meeting on March 14th of this year with the understanding that, of course, the department would advise clients to abide by court orders. And then, as you noted, the whistleblower signed a brief filed in the District of Columbia just weeks later, explaining all the legal reasons that in the JGG case, the department and the parties, the department and the parties the department represented had complied with court orders. And so for all those reasons, I don't think there's any validity to the suggestion that that whistleblower complaint filed yesterday calls into question my qualifications to serve as a circuit judge.
Bove opens with a folksy monologue fit for a campaign ad, not a confirmation hearing. I'm not a henchman, he insists, right after being the cleanup guy for Trump's legal messes. His resume reads like a MAGA loyalty test, from prosecuting drug lords to defending a president who incited insurrection. He claims to honor the Constitution, but helped dismantle it brick by brick. This isn't humility. It's a PR stunt. The only thing historic about his legal battles? How close they brought us to authoritarian rule. And just when you think the spin couldn't get slicker, Bove responds to explosive whistleblower allegations that he told DOJ lawyers to defy judges. Let's hear his carefully polished denial.
A top Justice Department official nominated by President Trump to serve as a federal judge faced tough questions from Senate Democrats in a hearing today. Emil Bove, who worked previously as a criminal defense attorney for the president, has faced intense scrutiny for some of the DOJ's most aggressive actions in recent months, including the firing of prosecutors and FBI agents who investigated the president and the January 6th insurrection. In his opening statement, Bove defended himself against recent criticism.
There is a wildly inaccurate caricature of me in the mainstream media. I am not anybody's henchman. I'm not an enforcer. I'm a lawyer from a small town who never expected to be in an arena like this.
Carrie Johnson covers the Justice Department for NPR and joins me now. Carrie, great to see you.
Thanks, you too.
So before we get into some of the hearing details, tell us more about Mr. Bove's qualifications and why he's considered such a controversial pick for this role.
Well, he has a long record working in and around courtrooms. He started as a paralegal for the Justice Department back in the day. He graduated from Georgetown University's law school. He clerked for 2 different federal judges, and then he went on to serve as a federal prosecutor in the Southern District of New York for many years, leading a unit that prosecuted drug kingpins and accused terrorists before going on to become the defense lawyer for Donald Trump. And since January, he's been basically running the Justice Department's operations day to day. Because the Justice Department has been engaged in a very aggressive campaign to both shrink itself and reorient its priorities, he stood at the center of a lot of controversies already.
So a number of issues came up at this hearing. Among them was he was asked about the decision to dismiss corruption charges against the New York City mayor, Eric Adams. That was as Mr. Adams agreed to cooperate with Mr. Trump's immigration agenda. Senator Blumenthal asked Mr. Bove if he'd spoken with Stephen Miller in the White House before making that decision. Here's that exchange.
Did you talk to Stephen Miller?
I'm not going to describe the participants in conversations.
So you won't answer that question?
No, I will not, Senator.
Why?
Because it is not appropriate for me to discuss.
It is appropriate for you to tell us whom you consulted before taking action on behalf of the United States of America.
Carrie, the fact that he would not answer that question, why is that important here?
It's significant because the allegation is that the Justice Department may have entered into a deal with Mayor Eric Adams, that Adams would help Trump with immigration priorities in exchange for dropping the criminal charges, the criminal corruption case against Eric Adams. Now, Bove denied that was the case, but he refused to answer questions about his conversations with people in the White House, including Stephen Miller, for whom immigration is really the highest priority. And it gives rise to questions about why he refused to answer that question and whether there were potentially improper conversations around that deal. Remember, many prosecutors quit over the move to drop the case against Eric Adams, and a judge ultimately found that it smacked of a bargain.
Mr. Bove was also appearing the day after this bombshell whistleblower report that accused him of basically instructing DOJ staff to ignore judges' orders using an expletive, according to the report, if they ruled against President Trump's deportation agenda. Here's Senator Adam Schiff asking about that.
Did you say anything of that kind in the meeting?
Senator, I have no recollection of saying anything of that kind. To the extent I
Wouldn't you recall, Mr. Bove, if you said or suggested during a meeting with Justice Department lawyers that maybe they should consider telling the court, "F you"? It seems to me that would be something you'd remember, unless that's the kind of thing you say frequently.
Carrie, we saw a lot of tough questions from Democrats on this. What about from Republicans? Did they express any concerns about that report or anything else?
No questions about controversial questions about the Eric Adams case, about the whistleblower complaint. A couple of Republican members asked questions about Bove's judicial philosophy, but many of them actually congratulated him upon being nominated and seemed to suggest he'd have a relatively smooth path to being confirmed.
What is your takeaway from watching the hearing? Does it seem he will have a smooth path to being confirmed?
Well, it's possible that new information could come out about some of Bove's activities inside the Justice Department this year, or maybe even some information about his time in the Southern District of New York previously. But Republicans have the math. They have the votes if they all stick together to confirm him on a simple majority vote.
So this is all taking place in a political arena, right? Take politics out of it for a moment. Among the folks you talk to, are there others in the legal world, for example, who have concerns about Bove's nomination?
Yes, what's interesting about this is that some figures inside the conservative legal movement are worried about Bove. They think that he potentially could be more loyal to President Trump personally than to the facts and the law, and that questions about his temperament as a prosecutor could carry over into his job as a judge if he's confirmed. Judges have a lot of power, and they want to be sure that Bove would exercise that power judiciously.
So given what we've seen from Mr. Bove's past, knowing what we do about his relationship with President Trump, what would having someone like Mr. Bove in this role as a federal judge, a lifetime appointment, we should underscore here, what would it mean for President Trump?
Sure. So Bove is 44 years old. Potentially, he could sit on the bench for 20 years or more. President Trump has cast Bove as an ideal nominee for the bench, and he could basically represent a pivot from Federalist Society, kind of conservative establishment type judicial picks, to ones with more personal ties to President Trump moving forward. And we're going to have to wait and see how Trump approaches the additional judicial nominations he gets for the rest of his term.
NPR's Carrie Johnson, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks.
Bove's denial is a masterclass in lawyer speak. I never advised anyone to violate court orders. Then proceeds to hedge, qualify, and hide behind procedural smoke. He praises whistleblowers, then discredits this one. He says he honors the rule of law while spinning technicalities to escape accountability. And let's not forget, the deputy AG backing him is also a Trump appointee. This is classic institutional gaslighting. Even if he didn't say the exact words, ignore the court. The culture of defiance he enabled is undeniable. America deserves better than loophole justice. What we just witnessed wasn't a judicial confirmation. It was a coronation of Trumpist loyalty cloaked in legal platitudes. Emil Bove isn't just a nominee. He's a signal flare. Trump wants loyalists on the bench, not constitutional guardians. He wants men who won't flinch when asked to bend the law, delay justice, or silence opposition. Bove's evasions, half-denials, and emotional appeals are not signs of judicial temperament. They're red flags. And the Republicans? They're not asking hard questions because they already have their answer. Loyalty to Trump is the only litmus test. If confirmed, Bove could shape American law for decades. And if the whistleblower is right, if he really told DOJ lawyers to defy courts, that's not just unethical, it's disqualifying. But in today's GOP, it's a resume booster. We can't normalize this. We can't stay silent because once loyalty replaces law, democracy becomes a show trial. If you believe the courts should defend the Constitution, not Donald Trump, subscribe to Malcolm Varon Hearing and share this breakdown. Truth matters. Let's make it loud.